Thank you everyone for being here. My father-in-law last night was imitating the way I start all my Tish'a BeAb classes. He said, we're tired, we didn't take a shower, we're not eating. And then I was like, shoot, then I have to start differently. But that was very similar to what my opening line was going to be. But today's Tish'a BeAb, as we know. The title of my class says Sorrow and Survival, Answering the Call of Tish'a BeAb. We're going to be talking, it's going to be a journey. We're going to be exploring different texts together, different thinkers, and we're going to see where that journey takes us. There's going to be different stages along the way. I want to call attention to the fact that for me, when I say the words survival, in a lot of ways I'm talking about intergenerational survival, about children, about the way we educate our children. And so a big focus is going to be on looking for that theme of children in all the texts that we're reading and throughout the class. So let's dig in. I'm gonna try my clicker. Did it do anything? Yes, okay. All right. So the main text that we read on Tish'a BeAb, although we read many things, really the prayers are deep and profound, and we think about a lot of things, but we read Echa, and we know the very famous opening line of Echa, Echa yasheva badad hayir rabati am, hayita ka'almana, rabati bagoyim, sarati b'medinot, hayita lamas, right? And I think it's astounding that as Jews, the opening question on our saddest day of the year is Echa. It's the right question. It's not, it says, how does a city that was once filled with people, it was the princess amongst all the nations, suddenly she is destitute, she is a widow, she's become a tributary. How did we get to this place? And I think this is the question of all sadness and sorrow. It's a question of, that breaking point between the before and after. Things were going so well, and all of a sudden, in a moment, I'm in a very different place than I was in the past, and I want to be back in my happy place. I don't like being in this sad place. It's very tragic. It's not comfortable. It's much worse than that. It's terrifying and terrible. And the call of our gut, which we read, is Echa. We are angry. We are frustrated. We are very, very sad. And I think the epitome for me in Echa of how we speak about this sadness is in terms of the loss of innocence, right? Where you see that the prophet says, my eyes are spent with tears, my heart is in tumult, my being melts away over the ruin of my people. Babies and infants are languishing in the city square. They keep asking their mothers, right? L'imotam yomru hayeh dagan vayayin. Where is bread and wine? They languish like battle-wounded soldiers in the squares of the town, and their lives run out in their mother's bosom. So when Echa wants us to understand what does tragedy look like, it looks like the inability to take care of infants, the inability of a parent to take care of a child, the loss of the natural order of life, where innocence and childhood and infancy should be protected, and here the children are suffering and they are dying, and it's terrible. And it's very sad that on Tish'a BeAb, the rabbis make us not only think about this moment in Jewish history, but about the destruction of both temples and the expulsion from Spain and the Holocaust and everything that's happened to the Jewish people, which is too much to recount. And then it's also our own personal sorrows, and all of that is layered onto this day. My sister gave me this book yesterday, right? This is called The Choice by Edith Aver Eger. So she is a survivor of the Holocaust. I see people have read it. She is the survivor of the Holocaust, and she also became a psychologist. So it is actually a very beautiful book. I would recommend it. But she describes, in very similar terms, her experience of the Holocaust. It's difficult for me to even read this passage because it's very graphic. Just briefly, she says, "Here in hell, I watch a man eat human flesh. For the sake of my own life, could I put my mouth around the skin left hanging on a dead person's bones? I have seen flesh defiled in unforgivable cruelty here at Auschwitz." And she goes on to describe the horrifying things that she had to witness about a mother who was giving birth. They tied her legs together so she couldn't give birth. So all of this, for me, I have to say, in general, I do not watch Holocaust movies. I do not read Holocaust books. When people tell these stories, I say, no, please stop. I turn my eyes away. I think we should. It's not, nobody should have to hear or see or think about that in their lives. Today, our rabbis have forced us to do so. They don't make us do it all the time, but they really want us to set aside a day where we confront the very dark aspects of life, and that we become very sorrowful and very sad. So why? And that's going to be the question of the first half of this class, okay? There's a lot of answers, and every class you go to, we're going to say very similar things. But the question I want to ask is, why the insistence on communal mourning, okay? Why do we need it? What is it doing for us? How is it transforming us? What purpose is it serving, okay? And now, just some sources around this. I'm sorry, I'm not used to using PowerPoint. Okay, you ready? So one thing that I think, I'm going to read these quotes, but it should not be new information to any Jew. Communal memory and Jewish identity are tied together, okay? Yosef Chaim Yerushalmi wrote a book called Zachor. He's talking about what it means to be a Jew and to live within history. He says, only in Israel and nowhere else is the injunction to remember felt as a religious imperative to an entire people. Right? That the nature of being Jewish means that we always are in a constant state of memory, that we live that way. It is necessary, if you are a Jew, that you have a good memory, that you have communal memory. Isaiah Berlin, a great Jewish thinker, says, all Jews who are at all conscious of their identity as Jews are steeped in history. They have longer memories. They are aware of a longer continuity as a community than any other which has survived. Almost, he is describing the Jewish people as the holders of historical memory for the human race, right? That a lot of other people don't necessarily practice history and memory. History and memory for us as Jews is our practice. It's an imperative. Rabbi Sachs says similarly, there is no sense in Judaism of the atomic individual, the self in and for itself, which we encounter in Western philosophy from Hobbes onward. Instead, our identity is bound up horizontally with other individuals, our parents, spouse, children, neighbors, members of the community, fellow citizens, fellow Jews. We are also joined vertically to those who came before us, whose story we make our own. To be a Jew is to be a link in the chain of the generations, a character in a drama that began long before we were born and will continue long after our death. The idea that Jewish people don't live these individual, independent, atomic lives, that we are constantly in a state of thinking about ourselves as a community and as a link in an intergenerational change. Do many of you, you don't have to answer this, but I hope that you, in your side of your Jewish identity, feel this every day, that you have a sense that your religion calls you to community and to interconnection. Okay, it demands that of you. Let's look a little more. So, but why? And the reason I'm saying why is because if we were sitting around on a dinner table right now and I would say why, we would come up with some nice answers. But a lot of people have thought this through before us, and we should investigate it today together. We have established that today is a day of sadness. We have established that it's a communal day of sadness. We have established that for Judaism, having a communal historical identity is a necessity. Why is it a necessity? Why am I not allowed to live an independent life, disconnected from history? What's the problem with that? This is from Martin Buber. I'm going to read it. You're all looking at it, right, over my head. When he writes, he was a great philosopher, but he was also a poet. I find him very hard to understand, so stick with me as I'm reading it. We'll analyze it together, okay? This is like literature class for a minute. He says, the child, discovering his or her identity, comes to know that he or she is limited in space. The adult, that he or she is limited in time, unlimited in time, but I think it's supposed to be limited in time. So when we're living in the world, a part of us says we're mortal. We're here for in a certain historical moment, for a certain historical time period. But as we discover our identity, our desire for eternity guides our range of vision beyond the span of our own life. Stirred by the awesomeness of eternity, we feel within ourselves the existence of something enduring. What is he saying? He's saying all of us know that our lives are not really limited to the moments we're living. We don't feel that way about ourselves. We feel that there's something bigger than just us, that we're part of something bigger, that we are more important than just the couple of 120 years that we live, right? I hope you feel. Do you feel that way? You should. Ronnie, do you feel that way? He's my son, right? He's here. My two sons are here. I don't want my children growing up thinking that they only have a couple of seconds to make an impact on the world. As we're living, I want them to feel that they have the power to actually live beyond the time frame of their limited years. Imagine that, right? So he says we feel that. We experience it still more keenly when we envision the line of mothers and fathers that have led up to us. The people are for us a community of people who were, are, and will be a community of the dead, the living, and the yet unborn, who together constitute a unity. So I'm not actually living my own life. I'm living a life that is in continuity with my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my children, and their children that I haven't met yet. That the actions I take in this moment, at this time, have a ripple effect far beyond my limited existence. Yeah? Do you see that? So, I want to tell you a story. A couple of years ago, I was sitting with a community member, a friend, and they are not religious. And they said, like almost from the Pesach Haggadah, why do you keep these laws? What are these laws to you, right? And I didn't want to get into a whole deep discussion about all Judaism, so I said, aside from everything else, I keep these laws because these are the laws of my mother and my father. He started laughing. He's like, see? He said, this is the stupidest thing I ever heard. You're keeping laws just because your father kept the laws? Be your own person. You're born, it's a blank slate. What do you care about? What came before? This is a real story. He was literally laughing hysterically. He thought I was the silliest person he had ever met. And of course, at the same time, I felt like that was one of the saddest conversations I had ever had. Because I said, imagine, and then he was like, let's explore Buddhism together. I'm like, nah, I'm out, Imagine living a life where you're told, everything that's come before, you could erase it. Recreate yourself anew. Why listen to the past? when you could just have your own new identity. I hear it a lot in the halls of education. When I hear as parents, I see, especially with little kids, like parents saying, where would you like to go today? Where would I like to go today? I'm 4. I have no idea. Do you have any suggestions? And a lot of parents who think that it's their job to liberate their children from their obligation to their parents' identity and send them free into the world unencumbered by their past. Judaism, whatever movement in human history is taking place that's moving in that direction, Judaism says that is not our way. We establish continuity. We establish community. History is necessary for identity. You are what you remember, right? Which we think about like with Alzheimer's patients and with loss of memory. Your identity and your memories are contingent upon each other. If you don't tell your children what their memories are, it will impact their identity. If you give them the right memories, their identity will move in the right direction. It's an astounding idea. I don't think I'm going to read the second paragraph. Read it myself. I'll read you a little bit more from Rabbi Sykes. He says something very similar. He says what I just said. This is Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. Memory is essential to identity, so Judaism insists. We did not come from nowhere, nor does our story end with us. There is something momentous about this historical sense. It reflects the fact itself, one of the great themes of the Torah, the Bible, that it takes time for human beings to learn, to grow, to rise beyond our often dysfunctional and destructive instincts, to reach moral and spiritual maturity and create a society of dignity and generosity. That is why the covenant is extended over time and why, according to the sages, the only adequate guarantors of the covenant at Mount Sinai were the children yet to be born. He's saying evolution is a hard process. And I'm not talking about Darwinian evolution. The evolution of human beings to higher orders of spirituality and ethics takes time. If we isolate each generation and expect them to figure it out in a vacuum, we're going to be in trouble. If we train them to live interdependently, maybe we have a chance. Maybe we have a chance at what? At survival. Okay? At continuing to be. This is Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel says, why write memories? Why share experiences? For the dead, it is too late. We do all that because it is not too late for our children. For all children, it is never too late. Right? So we're not remembering the Holocaust because those who died in the Holocaust died. They're not present. So why do we have to read that? I skipped, just so you know, I skipped the more graphic parts of the story. I mean, Rachel, you read it, right? I didn't want to read it out loud in a very large crowd. Maybe I should have. Because the point of reading it wasn't to horrify you. It was to let you remember that terrible things have happened to the Jewish people. Now, we all, as Jews, know that, but we don't like feeling sad about it on a continuous basis, and we have to remember how to do it. So that's part 1 of class, okay? Perfect time, 12:55. Let me try that again. So the next question is, so here's where we went. Communal history, necessary for identity. Remembering what happened in the past is going to transform us to the future. So why now? Why on Tish'a BeAb? The number one question I get to that, the answer I get to that question is, because everything bad happened on Tish'a BeAb. It's a very silly thing to say, people. I'm not saying you shouldn't be like a little nervous. Or like, I know people are like, I'm not going anywhere on Tish'a. Yeah, this is bad time. Bad things are going to happen. I get it. That's the superstitious part of our brain. But realistically, someone, and by someone I'm going to say the rabbis, okay? Someone is trying to do something to you at this time of the year. And that's the next thing I want to tell you. It's very specifically now, Tish'a BeAb. Why? And now you want to read my weird thing? Psycho-historical identity and the power of the Jewish calendar. Can you craft an ethical community? That's going to be the name of my PhD thesis when I go back to school. I Googled the word psycho-historical because I didn't know if it was a word. Mostly what came up was Alfred Hitchcock movie Psycho and its historical context. So it's not actually a word, but let's play with it, okay? When somebody asks you, what did you learn in class today? Psychohistory. Is that a thing? No. Esther Hidary made it up, but we're in. So psycho-historical identity, it is a thing. Oh, I don't know. Which one? My dad is here. What? One of them? My dad is saying that Isaac Asimov. Oh, see, it's probably in my brain from that. My family, we're crazy sci-fi fantasy readers. So Isaac Asimov did believe in psychohistory, and I forgot because that was in the Foundation series. I'm pointing to Ronnie again. Did I make you read Foundation yet? Where's David? Anyway, David read it. Everybody should go home and read the Foundation series. But what does this mean? The idea that can you do something to the human psyche so that it understands history in such a way that it changes the course of a community, okay? That's the question. Can you change the course of a community's history through the holidays? I want to show you something. I think this is crazy, okay? I think it's brilliant. Sometimes I look at what the rabbis did and I'm like, they were really smart, okay? So what do they say? They say the high holidays are coming. When are they coming? Very soon, okay? Rosh Hashanah is in how many weeks? 7 weeks. How do we know that they're in 7 weeks? Because our calendar dictates it. We have 3 weeks of sorrow. They shift into 7 weeks of when you're supposed to be building up to Rosh Hashanah. They peak in Yom Kippur, and then they transform into Sukkot. There is a cycle. It has to start on Tish'a BeAb for it to work. For the cycle to be effective, for Yom Kippur to work, you have to do Tish'a BeAb the right way. Now, how do they map this out for us? Number one, what book do we read over the next couple of weeks? What book of the Torah? This past week we started Devarim. We read it through till we start Bereshit again on Sukkot. That cycle is interesting because what does Sefer Devarim? Sefer Devarim has a unified theme. You know what the theme is? Moshe says, I'm going to tell you what your history is. I'm going to remind you about everything you went through. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Your children are going to forget their history. That's what's going to happen. And unless you remind them and teach them over and over, they will fall into error and tragedy will ensue. That's what Sefer Devarim says. It says if you don't protect your children by teaching them very well, tragedy will ensue. What's the centerpiece of Sefer Devarim? First of all, the Aseret HaDibrot. But what major prayer that's in every mezuzah that we say every single day do we pull from the book? We pull Shema, right? Love God. Teach it to your children. Ingrain it in their souls. Tell them the laws. Tell them the history. Why? Because without the history, without the sorrow, there is no survival. They will not make it. Okay? He says it over and over. Look, I literally could have pulled almost any quote from the entire Sefer Devarim. I pulled 2. I ran them. Okay? רק ישמר לך ושמור לנפשך מאוד. פן תשכח הדברים אשר ראו עיניך. Be very careful. Don't forget everything that happened. Upen yasuru milvavecha kol yemei chayecha. Maybe it's going to leave your hearts. V'hodatem levanech lebnei banecha. Make it known to your children and to your children's children. Wow. Vayomer Elohim, simu levavchem l'chol hadvarim asher anochi me'id bachem hayom. Right? Asher titzavem et bnechem l'shmor la'asot et kol divrei haTorah azot. Please teach your children to do everything written in this Torah. Ki lo davar reku mikem. Because this is not an empty thing. Ki hu chayechem. This is your life. This is what's going to extend your life. This is your survival instinct. I'm giving you the handbook. That's what we read from the moment of Tish'a BeAb onward. That's the center book that the rabbis have us reading. What else are we reading? Oh, this is more from Hidary. I like it a lot. He says, this is what your kids are going to say. I'm strong because I'm smart. I'm strong because I got here on my own. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. You ever hear Americans saying that? It's an American phrase. Syrian Jews don't really talk that way. We say, thank God I came to America, my community embraced me, I had $2 in my pocket, and I transformed myself, and I grew, right? Americans say, I went to the Wild West, and I took my gun. I don't know, maybe not. I don't know what Americans say. But something about a gun. Right? But in here we say, he says, but you know what we have to do? We have to remember. I'm feeling very Lion King right now, right? Remember. Mufasa. We have to remember that it is God who gives you the power to get wealth in fulfillment of the covenant that he made with your fathers, as is still the case. If you forget God, והיה אם שכוח תשכח את אדוני אלוהיך והלכת אחרי אלוהים אחרים ועבדתם והשתחוויתם להם העידותי בכם היום כי עבוד תאבדון. I swear to you today, as witness, if you lose this past and you forget it, you're going to be lost. That's what we're reading over the next couple of weeks. That's what's where the instruction we're getting, okay? Now I want to remind you what Echa says, okay? This is back to Echa. Echa says, you must cry in the presence of God. Lift up your hands to him. You know why you have to cry to him and turn to God? For the life of your infants who faint for hunger at every street corner, right? Women, and you thought this book was bad. This book that we just read is horrifying. Read it in English. Sometimes when we read things in Hebrew, we're like, oh, I don't know, nice Hebrew words that we said. That's not what you said. You know what the prophet is telling you? Women are eating their children in the streets, okay? The tongue of the suckling cleaves to his palate. He's begging for bread. No one is giving anything. Tender-hearted women are cooking their children. I know, you're like, why, Esther, stop. I was liking it, and then you started with this. I can't. What is he talking about? Why is that what Echa is saying? Why does he keep coming back to the idea of the parent-child relationship being destroyed, about children being destroyed? And I think I want to say to you something, that Devarim talks about children, Echa talks about children, Judaism talks about children. But what are children? This is, of course, the most powerful line. In Devarim again, this is Moshe. Adonai Eloheinu karat imanu berit bechorev. God, he instructed us with a covenant at Chorev, okay? Lo et avotenu karat Adonai et haberit hazot. He didn't, how do you say koret in English? What's another word? Anyway, it was not with our fathers that he made this covenant. Ki itanu, anachnu, ele, po, hayom, kulanu, chayim. He didn't cut the covenant with our fathers, but with us, The people here, everyone today, we the living. Who are the children for Moshe? Who are all children for Moshe? Jewish people. The current Jewish people. I'll say it in a word. The survivors. Okay? The people that Moshe is talking to, he says, if you are a survivor of Jewish history, then this message is for you. And you know who is a survivor of Jewish history? Everybody sitting in this room. We are survivors. We have survived. If we are here right now, it doesn't matter what's happening in our life, it doesn't matter if you are an actual child or if you're old, you are the survivor of Jewish history. And this book is for you. Remember Elie Wiesel said, the dead don't care. It's the children who matter. It's we in this room, we are the ones who matter. Right? So what do? Over the past 3 weeks, our prophets have been trying to talk to us about something. They've been very passionate with us. They've been crying very loudly for our attention. Basically, what they've been saying is, if you're not making the right choices and being very attentive, destruction will come. What's destruction? It doesn't matter. Not that it doesn't matter. It's not the path towards happiness and survival. And what do they say? Basically, they say, you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, because every time I tell you, you have to get better, for some reason you think it means going to shul and mouthing words. Like you think like something happened. You're like, I did it. We just read this, okay? God says, what need have I of all your sacrifices? I don't need it. I'm full. I have no delight in any of this. Who asked you for this? You trample my courts. You bring your oblations and incense. You think that celebrating Rosh Hashanah and Shabbat and all of that, you think that you fixed everything? I can't handle this stuff. You lift up your hands, you pray to me, I'm disgusted from you. Your hands are full of blood. Why does the prophet keep saying that to us? I'm going to skip a little. Okay? I want to say that I think the prophet is saying that to us because human beings, and I'm counting myself here, we really don't like what Tish'a BeAb is trying to make us do, right? So the 3 weeks say, you gotta change, you gotta grow, you gotta shift. And then Tish'a BeAb says, you gotta have a memory of how much tragedy was inflicted upon us. Why? And I'm gonna give you a little analogy, okay? I was talking to one of my fellow principals, okay? We were talking about a child in the school, and we were wondering together, the child had done something very bad, okay? Like super offensive, really not okay. And we were wondering together if he had changed, because we had given him a punishment, quote unquote. And the question, I remember we turned to each other and said, did he seem sad? It's a weird, right? Like, did he seem upset? What does that mean? It's not the right thing, because who knows? People hide their emotions. But, like, did he feel sorrow? Did he feel bad about what he had done? Or is it just emptiness? Is there nothing really changing here? And I guess today that's the question I want us, and here I want to pause now on this slide and say, this is to me this is what we have. I lost it. Oh, right at the pinnacle. Did I touch something? Oh my gosh. All right, somebody will come rescue me. Hello? That doesn't do anything. So this is the big question, okay? What are we going to do? First of all, I think most of the time we love a great empty gesture. What's a great empty gesture? Like I said, I prayed, I said a Mizmor of Tehillim, I feel like I'm good, okay? I did my little ritual. Or we turn to idolatry. We say, wow, Judaism is way too hard. I think I'll try something else for a little while, right? This is too burdensome for me. The one thing we don't actually want to do is change. Can you all hear me? Yeah, good. Here's my big little secret, okay? Everybody sitting in this room, and by everybody, I mean every single person sitting in this room, knows in their heart of hearts how the person that they're closest to in the world has to change. Right? We are like experts on this, all right? We have spent much time thinking about if they would only, right? And then, I'm back. And in our brains we're like, if they would only, right? And we know it. We know what it is. And now what's weird is that each of us, as I'm saying it, so that means, let's say you're married, your spouse has information for you, okay? About your growth as an individual. So now you might think that the next thing to do is to go home tonight and be like, so is there something about me that you think I need to change? Your spouse is, the answer is yes. There is something about you that you need to change. Now spouses, I'll make it the husband. Don't tell your wife what she needs to change. Because I don't want the after effects of this class to be divorce. It's not a good idea. One time, you say, listen, I love you. Opening line, I love you. You're amazing. Sometimes I think you could be a little sensitive. I'm sorry. You think I'm sensitive? You think I'm a sensitive person? Okay. 10 years later, you're walking down the street. Your wife stubs her toe. She says, ow. She's like, why? Am I being too sensitive? Are you upset? Is that a problem? So, this is what it is to be a human being. We're expert on human psychology. Your flaws are not so hidden, everybody. Okay? Everybody knows it. Turn to your 3 best friends and your husband and they'll tell you what your major character flaw is that you need to change. But people, you shouldn't give them this feedback because we can't accept it. But what does it mean? What does it mean that the one person who actually needs to know this information refuses to confront it, / is blind to it, right? This is why so much of the Torah is a crying out to the individual to say, can you please wake up to some of the core issues that you have to confront and combat? Because if you're not going to, how are you going to change? When is growth going to happen? When are you going to get a little bit upset about certain patterns of behavior that you have, which are upsetting and wrong? And the answer is, as individuals, we have to, today on Tish'a BeAb, we have to say, you know what? The Torah says, and has been trying to tell me, and the rabbis constructed my Jewish calendar in such a way that they want me to approach Yom Kippur 7 weeks, 10 weeks in advance, and to start thinking not a week, those 10 days, what do I need to change, but what does need to change? How do I need to grow? Because it's very worried about my survival. It's very worried about the next stage of my existence. It wants to know what's going to happen to me. So as individuals, you have to do soul searching. As a community, we could be a little bit more forthright with each other, okay? So as individuals, I'm not going to tell you, Rachel. You can come to me privately later. I'll tell you your secret flaw. But as a community, and I want to say, I wrote this down, I said, I don't even know if I feel comfortable talking about the community's flaws. First of all, I don't know if it's my place. Second of all, even as a community, I think we're very uncomfortable. On Shabbat, we were talking with my kids, we were talking about philanthropy in the community. And I know growing up, everybody said the Syrian community is the most philanthropic community in the entire world. No one beats us for philanthropy. And I was once at a book club and I said, I think we could do a better job with our charity giving. 3 people got up and walked out. I'm not joking. They were very horrified that I would critique the community that way. It's the same way as when your husband says you're a little too sensitive. We're like, what? Me? The least sensitive person? The community thinks it's the most philanthropic community in the world. I'll say it today. Something we could work on. Our institutions are not as healthy as they could be. There is money to be given to education and to many other places. There is ways that we could be the premier community in the entire world on a lot of other levels. There's room for growth there. I'm going to say it, okay? When it comes, we say that we're the nicest community in the world. We support each other like no one else. We also judge each other like no one else. We're very judgy. We look at each other a lot. It's not always easy to go to the supermarket, guys. It's hard. I'm just like, I didn't brush my hair before I came. I didn't know that that was something we needed to do. Why is everybody in heels? Where are they coming from? And where did they get that outfit? I think about this a lot, right? Education. I am a principal of one of the largest schools we have. I look around, and thank God, I'm going to give a shout out to my school, Yeshiva Flatbush, best school ever, here on close. Great school. But you know what I love about the school? It says, let's prepare our children to be real, to really be able to affect change on a global scale. They're going to know. I want them to be smart. I want them to read. I want them to write. I want them to do science. I want them to know Torah. I want them to be able to speak Hebrew. I want them to be attached to the Jewish homeland. I want them to be Zionists. And I look around and I see many children around our community being educated to apostasy, where they are not being taught the major skills that they need. They are not being given that depth of commitment to all aspects of life. I know, you say, this is uncomfortable, Esther, you shouldn't be saying these things, to each his own. But I don't really feel that way. I feel that Tish'a BeAb is a time where we have to speak truth, because the alternative is dangerous. If we're going to keep hiding from the things that we need to change, we're not going to get there. I don't want to keep looking around and seeing empty gestures. It saddens me. And then I'll get me out of the picture. The prophets have predicted every moment of this existence. No, Daddy? There's nothing that they didn't already see. It was 2,000 years ago. They saw everything that we were going to be doing. And they said, you want to talk to God? You want to have a prophetic, meaningful life? You want to know the future? Here's the book. And we ignore it. You know how many people say, Esther, how can I live a better life? I want happiness. You turn to God, you say, I want to be happy. God says, I have a great idea for you. Keep the Sabbath. Like, okay, what else you got? I don't know. Honor your mother and father. Have you met them? Don't be jealous. Okay, I'm out, all right? It's the 10 Commandments. We can't even accept the 10 Commandments. They annoy us. So this is where we're at. What time is it? 1:20. I'm almost done. We're calling the covenant. You see my little pun? Yeah. Okay. So where am I going with all of this? I didn't say the word yet, but I'm going to say it now. The word I wanted to say this whole time is Tish'a. But I'll say it like a Syrian. Tish'a BeAb. Okay? That's what this class was really about. It was about Teshuvah. And the rabbis tell us there are stages to the process of Teshuvah. Teshuvah means a return. This return that we're looking to is to a time of joyousness, of happiness, of completion. The rabbis say the first stage is recognizing the sin And then, do you know the word that they use? Charata. You have to feel sad. You have to feel bad. You have to regret it. So if you're not going to start with the first two stages, you're not getting further on to the Yom Kippur stuff. If you're not going to experience it now. This is Moshe and Devarim again. This is actually a very hopeful phrase. Okay? So with all that we're saying, I just want you to know, throughout the past 3 weeks and in every single text that you're going to read in the Torah, as it's telling you, understand the sorrow of the day, understand your communal history, understand what went into you, feel bad about things, do some soul searching as an individual, as a community. It also says, just so you know, the second you start to do these things, someone is waiting to wrap you up in their arms and take you to the next level. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there the minute you want to turn to him. The minute, right? Ubikashta Misham. Where is Misham? Moshe is saying, listen, terrible things are going to happen. You are going to be spread out across the four corners of the earth. You're going into Galut. You're going to be lost. And you're going to say, is there any way back? And you know what he says? Ubikashta Misham et Adonai Elohecha umatzata. If wherever you are, if you seek God out, you will find him. Ki tidrishenu b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha. If you search for him with all your heart and with all your soul, you're going to find him. B'tzar lecha, when you are sad or in distress, u'mitzaucha, right? Find kol hadavarim ha'ele ba'acharit ha'amim. Okay? Remember, when you're in distress and all of these things that have happened to you, that I said that would find you, v'shavta Adonai Elohecha v'shamata b'kolo. Return to God. Obey his voice. Ki el rachum Adonai Elohecha lo yarpecha v'lo yashchitecha v'lo yishkach et brit avotecha asher nishba lahem. Because God is a compassionate God. He will not fail you. He will not let you perish. He will not forget the covenant. He made an oath to your fathers, and he will uphold it. Isn't that so beautiful? That in the midst of telling us all that we need to change and do, every single one of the prophets says, don't worry. Just now in the 3 weeks we said, even if your hands are as filled with blood, they could become white again. Even if you have been sinning forever, there is a way back. That road is never closed off. It's always open. There is no tragedy that can overcome the power of Teshuvah. This is how Echa ends. This is the last line of Echa. There's one other, but I did the second to last line. Hashivenu Adonai Elohecha ben Ashura, Hadesh Yimenu Kedem. Take us back, God, and let us come back. Renew our days as of old. It's a very beautiful thought to end on, but I'm not done. Give me 2 more minutes. What do we do now? What's the next step? I read this quote to my class this past week, but I want to read it again to close us off, okay? This is from Rabbi Soloveitchik. Rabbi Soloveitchik's family was almost completely wiped out in the Holocaust. Almost no one was left except for him. He established a whole new community in America, and Judaism, out of his work, was revived. Okay? What does he say? According to Judaism, man's mission in this world is to turn fate into destiny. An existence that is passive and influenced into an existence that is active and influential. An existence of compulsion, perplexity, and speechlessness into an existence full of will, vision, and initiative. In short, man must solve not the question of the causal or teleological reason for suffering with all its speculative complexity. What does that mean? He's saying, don't waste your time trying to figure out why is this tragedy happen? What is sadness? Let's just linger on that we're so sad, okay? It's not what we need to do. Rather, right? The question is of its curative role in all its halachic simplicity by turning fate to destiny and elevating himself from an object to a subject, from a thing to a man. The Nazi said, "You are things," and destroyed us. Our response was, "We are men," and we overcame the destruction. The same writer, also Holocaust survivor, says, "Survivors don't have time to ask, 'Why me?' For survivors, the only relevant question is, 'What now?'" And, a lot of pictures have been floating around the Instagram verse. You saw the picture of the woman with her 400 children. I found another picture just because it was a little meaningful to me, and I felt like it summed up so much of what this class was about, which is the intergenerational bond, the sorrow of her mark, the beauty of the next generation, and also the need, the eye contact, the education, the learning, the telling the story to the child, which is the sorrow, but the survival that comes from that, which is the rebirth of the next generation, instructed by all the sadness that has gone before, filled with our history, filled with the words of our prophets, filled with the rabbis guiding us along our calendar to a moment of real growth. We should all be successful on that journey. Tizku l'rov b'nechmat Zion.